So, hello and welcome to a new episode of That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. And I'm here tonight with Kimberly Shapiro. Well, it's her afternoon. She's based in Connecticut in the States. We found each other on Instagram, where she posts under the handle Fiercely Kind. I was very much inspired by her posts about her own fertility journey and also her twins who were born, I think it's over 2 years ago now, right?
Almost 2 years. It'll be
Almost two
two
years.
years in October. Yep.
Yeah. I'm a twin mom myself, so I know that well, the whole pregnancy can be a bit more scary and a bit more complicated than in Kimberly's case. She lost one baby, Quinn. No, sorry, one baby, Amelia, after
Mhm.
you gave birth. And then Quinn lived for another year, 365 days in the NICU,
Mhm.
before she passed away as well. And given that it's Infant and Pregnancy Loss Awareness Month, I thought it would be, yeah, I want to say beautiful or inspiring, or those are not the right words. I just wanted to connect with you, um, because you share in a very open way, and it feels with a lot of integrity about your journey. You started your own coaching business as well,
Mhm.
helping other women on this journey. So I give you a little bit of an introduction, but maybe in your own words, you can also tell us a bit more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And thank you for having me. I am very transparent about our journey because I found that it's helped me to connect to other people as well as helping them too. And it's cathartic for me to be able to share about our story. And it also means a lot for me to be able to keep my girls' memories alive.
Mm,
So there's a lot of reasons why I want to share, and I'm happy to always do so. So yeah, we've had a very long journey. Most recently, we had our loss of Quinn and Amelia, and I found myself having to pivot in my career. I'd been a school counselor for 10 years, and which I'll get into soon about Quinn's journey, but with the extensiveness of it, I had to quit my job. And unfortunately, when she passed away, I returned home without a job anymore.
mm,
And this was a good opportunity for me to kind of pivot and decide what I really want to do with my new self, since the me that, existed 2 years ago is very different than the me that I am now.
mm,
So I stumbled upon coaching, life coaching technically, and was really exploring how I would feel doing this for a career. And the more I learned about it, the more I felt like it was for me. And so the freedom that it allows me has been amazing. I can kind of do with it whatever I want. So I've taken it and kind of ran with both working with adults and children. With adults, I do have a specialty or a focus, I should say, in the fertility realm,
mm,
just based on my own personal experience, living in this world for 60 years of fertility. So I tend to gravitate to clients who are in that field themselves, in that journey, in the middle of like a fertility nightmare themselves. But I also do work with adults who don't have fertility challenges, who are just facing regular life challenges or transitions, anything that's causing them to feel like they are maybe not functioning optimally and they would like to have a little bit of support in their journey. Secondarily, I work with children as well. This is a way for me to continue to flex my muscle of, teaching social and emotional learning skills to kids. That was, my favorite part of being a school counselor was helping children with their emotions, teaching them how to cope, how to get along with others, how to focus, how to be their best. So now I have been doing that as well with children, doing small groups, and I do plan to see some children individually as well to focus on things like self-esteem, coping skills, emotion regulation, anything under that umbrella.
mm. And
Yeah.
how is that for you to work with kids? Has that changed after those 2 years that well, your fertility journey has been longer, but I can imagine that those last 2 years were like very
Yeah.
transformational.
Yeah. So when I came home in last October, I really was very challenged by the idea of going back into a school building and working with children in that setting. As a school counselor, a lot of the work that I did revolved around children who, for lack of a better word, are not being treated necessarily appropriately by their families.
Mm,
And for me, that was a very hard prospect to deal with, knowing that I would give anything to have a healthy living child, and that there are some families out there who don't seem to have that same gratitude or acceptance of the blessing that they've been given. That was very hard for me. So it was difficult, and that was a big factor in my choosing a different career, because now the work that I do is a little bit more streamlined towards families who are looking to get the best for their children, who want help, who want support, who are
Mm,
there to help their children be the best. And those are the stories that I feel like I'm most available for right now in my current place of functioning on my healing journey.
mm,
So that has been great for me to be able to work with kids in that way. It's also not 8 hours a day every single day anymore,
mm.
which has been helpful too, because it's a
Yeah.
facet of my business now versus being my whole entire career. Since I do work with adults, it is a nice buffer. It changes things a little bit, and it's not, working with kids from sun up to sundown every
Mm.
day.
Yeah.
So that has been a little bit less triggering for me and a little bit easier for me to digest than going back into a school setting right now.
Oh, I can definitely imagine that.
Yeah.
And can you share a little bit more about your fertility journey? Because you
Yeah.
mentioned
Mhm.
these weren't your first losses even, right?
Right. So we started our fertility journey in 2018. That was when we were first married. And I got pregnant naturally the first month that we were trying.
Mm,
And I was very surprised and very excited and was like, wow, that was easier than I thought it would be. But unfortunately, the joy did not last long. At about 5.5 weeks, it became what is known as a pregnancy of unknown location, which I'd never heard of before. And there's no support groups or anything for that because it's very rare. It's not very talked about. But basically, in a case of a pregnancy of unknown location, it's when you can't find the pregnancy on an ultrasound. And it could be for a variety of reasons. It could be that it's just too early and it's too small to be seen. It could be that it's an ectopic pregnancy. It could be that it is a miscarriage that's already resolved. And so there's nothing left to see in the uterus on the ultrasound screen. In my case, they were suspecting it was ectopic. So even though they were never able to identify where the pregnancy was, they treated me with medication as if it was ectopic. And it ended up being a 57-day ordeal until it was completely resolved. So it was very emotionally and physically taxing, not exactly how I pictured my fertility journey beginning, but kind of naively, I figured, okay, well, I got that out of the way. It should be smooth sailing from here on out, and still not the case. Um, didn't get pregnant again until over a year later, and that one was a chemical pregnancy. And at that point, then we'd started seeing a fertility specialist. So the next time I got pregnant was through IVF, and we transferred one embryo, and um, it was a little boy. And unfortunately, we lost him at 8.5 weeks as well. So we'd had 3 losses between 2018 and 2021.
mm,
Um, and then that was like December of 2021. And then I started seeing a different doctor, and we were incorporating some different things, and we tried again with IVF the following May in 2022. And again, we only transferred one embryo. We only ever were trying for a singleton pregnancy because with all of our challenges, I was like, the last thing I need is a twin pregnancy with all
mm,
the extra risks that it carries. Um, Lo and behold, we transferred one embryo and it split. It had, different opinions than we did on the twin
mhm.
thing. So it split to become our girls, Quinn and Amelia. And my pregnancy was going very well until about 18 weeks. Everything was textbook. They were growing right on, the mark, exactly how they were supposed to be. And then I started bleeding, and it turned out that my placenta was starting to separate a little bit from the uterus. And so it was causing a little bit of bleeding. And the doctors were very unsure of what would happen. They couldn't give me any reassurance, like things will be fine. But they also weren't saying, well, things are bad right now. It was just kind of a wait and see. So for 4 weeks, we continued to wait and see. And I was, bleeding on and off. I was put on like, rest and everything for periods of time. And then at 21 weeks, I ended up being hospitalized because I was having contractions. So we were able to hold off the contractions for another week until at 22 weeks and 5 days, I did give birth, unfortunately. And Amelia was born sleeping, and Quinn was born at less than 1 pound. She was 15.9 ounces, and she went straight to the NICU, which we stayed there for 5 months at our home in Connecticut. We stayed at that NICU. And then she just wasn't progressing with her lung disease, which develops as a side effect of prematurity.
Mhm.
Um, so we transferred to a hospital 600 miles away in Ohio. that would specialize in her lung disease. So she and I moved out there. My husband stayed here in Connecticut to work and to stay with our house and our dog. And he came to visit us on the weekends, every other weekend, roughly. And we were there for 7 months as well. In, I want to say July or August, I think July, she was diagnosed with hepatoblastoma, which is liver cancer. So that created a second kind of whirlwind that we were dealing with now, in addition to the lung disease. But they did do an ablation surgery on it, and it was successful
Mm.
in ridding her of that condition. But we only found that out on her first birthday, which happened to be the day that she passed away unexpectedly from an acute condition with her lungs.
Mm.
So that was October of 2023 that she passed. And they were born on October 10th, 10/10 in 2022. And then she passed on 10/10, 2023. And I just felt like that was very symbolic, and it felt very intentional that she wanted to be with her sister on their birthday to celebrate
Mm.
together.
Yeah.
That brings me a little bit of comfort to know that, we only have the one day each year where we're reminded of not that we don't think about it every day, but we have the one day of remembrance every year that is their birth and both of their death.
Mm.
So yeah, that was October of last year, and I came home and have been, just kind of trying to figure out where to go from here and starting this new business and getting accustomed with the new way of life and the new me that I am after all this trauma.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
it must be a completely different you.
completely.
What have you
Yeah.
noticed? Like, what are some of the changes that you've
Yeah.
witnessed in yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting because in some ways I would say I am a new and improved version of me as far as like resiliency and grit and perseverance. Little things that might have frustrated me before don't seem like a big deal anymore. And it's easier for me to do things that were harder before because, like, for example, IVF, we just did another retrieval in June, an egg retrieval. And the first retrieval that I did, I was terrified. I was so nervous. I was freaking out about it all. And this time I was like, well, nothing can be as bad as what I've been through. I've
Mm.
already been through the worst. So nothing is going to be that bad. So I can do this. I can get through it. So my perseverance, my grit, my strength, all of those have improved. Things that have maybe not improved would be, feeling triggered by things that I wasn't triggered by before,
Mm.
noticing things like that, noticing, your relationships change after a trauma like this. And that's unavoidable to a degree because there's just going to be a natural separation between somebody who's been through a trauma like this and somebody who hasn't. There's so many layers to it that you couldn't imagine unless you've been there. But everybody in my life has been very supportive and has been, they did everything that they could to try to be there for us. It's just hard for me to feel like I can relate to anybody anymore because my life has been so turned upside down.
Mm-hmm.
That has been a change. Um, and just, not find like I feel like I don't give as much thought to things that I used to before because they don't seem like a big deal anymore, which can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing because, sometimes little things do require attention, but other times they shouldn't, suck up all your brain space. So it's a good thing and a bad thing, I guess,
Mm.
sometimes depending on the situation.
Yeah. Was
Mhm.
wondering, and so I haven't gone through the amount of trauma that you've gone through, but I've had my own share of things to deal with. And sometimes I feel like it's easier now almost to live in the hard part
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's familiar and that's like I know how to handle that. And then it's when
Right.
things are easier, I'm like, not
Yeah.
sure if I'm comfortable with this. This
Right.
you
You
recognize that?
become accustomed to it. Yeah. It
Yeah.
becomes your normal.
Yeah.
Uh, I've thought about that before. I'm like, when we're out of this fertility journey, I'm wondering how I'm going to react to that, how I'll respond, because it has been our life for so long, for 6 years now.
Yeah.
Like, what's it going to feel like not to be focusing on fertility with everything I do every day,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about your girls?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we didn't get to know Amelia, outside of the womb, but You know, when we would have ultrasounds, like the two of them were always playing. They were always up to no good. They were always, you know, moving around so much that the ultrasound tech couldn't get good pictures.
Mm.
You know, we had to have our anatomy scan over 2 visits because they were just too busy moving around, playing with each other, you know, sitting on each other's heads. Like they were very, very playful, you
Mm.
know, from the very beginning. And, you know, I wish that I had more time to get to know her and her personality, but I would imagine it would be similar to Quinn's as far as strength and perseverance goes. Quinn was, we called her the Mighty Quinn because she was such a warrior,
Mm.
like constantly defying the odds. Nobody thought that she would survive as long as she did. Every time they tried to like assume something about her, she would prove them wrong, the doctors and nurses. She was super feisty, but had such a sweet side too. And she loved her cuddles. She loved, you know, certain musicians more than others. She loved Jack Nicholson. Um, she loved getting her massages. Like we would have a massage therapist come in and massage her, and she would love it. She would cry when it was over. And I was like, "Who gets that from me?" I never want my massages to end either. She, you know, she loved getting her feet rubbed, getting lotion put on her body. Like she was, you know, she was a girly girl and she loved, you know, being pampered and spending time together. And you know, just I feel like her spirit will forever live on because I've never met anybody like her.
Mm.
I
She
never
sounds like a fighter.
will. Hmm.
It
Hmm.
also sounds like she stuck around for you. I don't know. That's a feeling I'm getting.
I think so too. Yeah, I think that she did. And, you know, like I said, everything feels intentional about the timeline. And I think I learned so much during that year that she was with us. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. She, you know, she taught me so much about being a mom and a human. So
Mm.
yeah, it was amazing.
That's beautiful. Do you
Thank
have
you.
like an example of something she taught you?
I think just she taught me how to be the best mom that I can be. And I think, you know, how I talked about how I'm different now, I'm going to be a different mom than I would have been before. I was always so nervous about everything. Like I was questioning the kind of mother that I would be. I was like, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to
Mm.
have intuition? Am I going to know? Am I going to have that unconditional love? You know, because you worry about that after being on this journey for so long. I started to wonder, like, am I cut out for this? Am I not having the opportunity to have children because I wouldn't be good at it? And she taught me like that I absolutely am an amazing mom and just the way that I had to show up for her every day. I had to tap into strength that I didn't know I had. Um, you know, to go for 365 days in a row into a hospital and fight for your daughter's life. Um, that's an experience not many people at all ever get to have. And while it was extremely stressful, it was also very empowering. And I was able to learn so much about my own, you know, courage and determination. I was able to really tune into her and learn what she needed at any given moment of the day. And I would be, you know, sitting on the other side of the room and I would hear just the slightest sound and be like, oh, she needs this. And they're
Mm.
like, I don't know if she does. I'm like, no, she does. Can you do this? And they would do it and she'd get better. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you do know. And I had to fight for her because, you know, the healthcare field is challenging. There's burnout, there's turnover, there's short staffing. It's a challenging field. And anybody who's had anybody in the healthcare system will probably agree that you really do need to be an advocate when you have a person that you love needing support medically. They need somebody there to advocate for them because you know the doctors and nurses only get to know them so much through their limited experience, but we are their person. I was her person there constantly. I saw her every single day. I knew her patterns, I knew her habits, I knew her likes and dislikes. And so when I noticed that something was going wrong, I would have to be the one to speak up about it. And I'd have to do
Mm.
it in a way that they would listen to me and take me seriously, which is
Mm.
challenging. I don't have a degree in medicine. So it was like a crash course in like nursing, like critical care nursing for me. So I learned a lot about medically, you know, the lungs, ventilators. I learned about because she had a tracheostomy so that she could breathe. So I learned about how to change her trach, how to clean it, how to, you know, take care of it. I learned how to, she had a G tube for feeding. I had to take care of her G tube. I would give her feedings through it. So many like mechanical things that I never would have imagined having to do for a child.
Mm.
Um, and then also, like I said, just the strength that came with advocating and knowing like, okay, I know her, like I know
Mm.
her in and out and I know what she needs. So if I ever am like blessed with a living child again, I'll have that same connection, that same
Mm.
bond, and I know that I'll be a good mom to them too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do those things also help you going now? Because I can imagine it was a really big shift being in that hospital for 365 days and then, you're
Yeah.
home and you have to move forward.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
It was a culture shock for sure. It definitely felt, and because it was so unexpected the way everything happened, it was sudden, it was unexpected. We thought we would still be in the hospital for another number of months. Um, so it was an interesting change because suddenly everything that I was living for every day was gone. And I had to really grapple with what's my purpose here now? Like, what is my meaning on earth?
Mm,
My soul, the being that I was keeping alive is no longer alive anymore. What do I do now? And I had to kind of tap into other areas of my life. And, I have a husband and we supported each other during that time. And then I have a dog who honestly, I can't imagine this without him. He's
mm,
been amazing. Just to come home to him, I hadn't seen him in 7 months because I was in the hospital in Ohio. So I missed him so much. And having like that therapeutic connection to an animal
mm,
was helpful to me and still is. Like he is just, I love him so much. Um, and just finding a new meaning, finding another meaning in my life. It's really challenging and it's very easy in that kind of a situation to fall into a pit of depression.
mm,
And I was determined not to do that. So I made sure that I was doing my best and using my coping skills and tapping into my resiliency because I didn't want Quinn's legacy to be one of negativity. I didn't want what she became, her last act here on earth to be like destroying her mother. I
mm,
couldn't have that be her legacy. So for her, I need to keep going. And so I was able to kind of reframe my thoughts that way. And I'm working on still trying to see triggers as, signs from her instead of like a trigger. I see it maybe
mm,
as a sign. And just kind of evaluating the moments of my day and why I'm feeling the way I am and how to get myself out of it if it's a moment of discomfort.
mm.
Mhm.
I find it really powerful what you're saying, especially that seeing triggers as signs from her.
Yeah, it's not always easy, but I try.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can totally see what you mean. That it's her showing up and saying, "Look at what you've learned or what I taught you."
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Do you feel that she's still around? Like, do you still try to maintain that connection?
Yeah, I do. I do. From the beginning, the signs that I would get from the girls were never subtle. They were always very obvious. And so, when you have a twinless twin, they call it a purple butterfly is the sign of the twin that was lost. So when
Mm,
I see butterflies, I would always think of Amelia. And Quinn was our rainbow baby, which is the baby after losses. So she was our rainbow baby. And so whenever I see rainbows and butterflies, I think of them. And it was funny, well, kind of funny, but kind of sad too. But I went back to Ohio the month after Quinn passed because one of her besties, one of, the other babies on the unit, unfortunately passed away too.
mm,
And I become very close with that mother when I was out there. And when I drove up to the hospital after being away for a month, there were huge lit up, probably each one was probably close to my height, butterflies all over the lawn.
wow.
They were doing a butterfly ceremony. So I was like, could there be a clearer sign? I was like, girls, you're never subtle. Like you're always very obvious in your signs. So, that's just one example, but there's been so many, like, I'll see 1010, everywhere, which is, the date that they were both born and passed
Mm,
on. I see rainbows at strategic times. I see butterflies, and people will send me them too. Like they'll send me pictures and stuff like, oh, I was thinking of the girls, and then, this happened, and I saw this beautiful rainbow, um, and things like that. So there's definitely lots and lots of signs. And I just feel like I could just feel her around. And I've
mm,
spoken with mediums and stuff too about it. So that helps me feel a little bit
mm.
closer in,
Yeah.
what they say and what they feel
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Did you get any nice messages?
Yeah. So I actually had a friend who was who is a medium as well, and she felt like she could communicate with Quinn when we were in the NICU. And so she would tell me things, like she would message me and be like, hey, I think something's going on with her left lung. She's telling me something is wrong on her left lung. And sure enough, like she would have, something going on there.
Mm,
She said one time there was something wrong with the line in her arm, and her line there was an issue with the line in her arm at that time.
mm,
So it was very, very vivid and very specific, the way that she was able to relay those messages to somebody who would then relay them to me.
mm,
Um, and, there was a time where she communicated with Amelia too. And it was funny because I'm kind of like really into grammar, like proper like spellings of things and proper grammar. And we were talking, I was talking with a nurse at our hospital about a different baby. And we were talking about Amelia too. And the nurse mispronounced Amelia's name. And my friend messaged me later on and was like, Amelia told me that's not how you say her name. Of course she said that. Like, of course. Nobody else would have ever known, like whatever, there's no other way to explain that.
yeah.
And like I said about, her passing on her birthday, there's so many signs. And,
Mm,
just even before I got pregnant, I was asking for signs of, is this the right embryo to transfer? Are we doing this at the right time? And
mm,
I was like, can you send me a sign, please? And at that time I was still working in the school, and a student made me a sign within like a day or two, drew a sign
mm,
that said, you are the best. And the T was very, very bold and very, very big. And it looked like a cross. Like when you looked at the sign, it looked like a cross. And so it was like I asked for a sign, and I got a sign with a cross, like physical sign with an actual cross on it.
mm.
It was, yeah. So I just feel like there's always been, and then I got twin yolks in my egg shortly thereafter. And, it's just, there's been so many signs. And I think that I'm more in tune to them because they do bring me so much comfort. Like
Mm,
a song that I know Quinn loved will come on the radio at just the time where I need it, or
mm,
just little things like that that I might otherwise overlook. I try to just be very aware, and I take in things like, obviously we have the rainbows and butterflies as signs and the numbers, but I try to take in things that might not be as obvious as a sign as well.
mm,
That helps too, with my healing, just to feel like she's still here
mm.
as well. Mhm.
And do you also receive signs now because you're on your fertility journey still, right? So you're moving
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah.
Are they guiding you there as well, or do you feel like
Yeah.
you're maybe connected to a different soul, or are you trying to even?
I'm trying, and I'm staying open to all of it, but it is confusing because sometimes I'm like, am I feeling Quinn's energy because she wants to come back in another body? Or is it just that she's here and she's letting me know she's here and she's
Mm,
gonna support us from afar? And then I wonder, like, is this other spirit baby coming next? I do, because I do feel energies of other babies around me too. So I'm trying to figure it all out. I'm like, I don't really know. And I think when we do have, if we do have another baby, I'll have to get to know that baby to know for sure if that's a new spirit or
mm,
if it's Quinn coming back to me. Because it's so hard to know what the messages mean in that sense. Like when I'm meditating and I'm connecting with a spirit baby, it's a little bit convoluted still.
mm.
So the messages there are not so clear as the signs are sometimes.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
I remember it was when I lost my baby. I was so surprised because I had such a strong energetic connection,
Yeah.
and we just found out at our first scan that there was no heartbeat. And I remember going in, I was so confident because I felt that connection.
Mhm.
And that was
Yeah.
really when I realized after that scan, like the energy doesn't mean life. The energy is
Exactly.
just there. And that's also what gave me a lot of comfort. Like,
Yeah.
because I could also still connect with them after the loss.
Yeah.
But it's not something, it's a whole new realm, I think, for many of us.
For sure. And that's exactly the realization I had to come to as well, because all the signs I'd been looking for before, I was taking those signs like, send me a sign if everything's going to be okay. And I would take those signs to mean, okay, that means that things are going to go well. Things will be
Hmm.
okay. But then they weren't okay. And I had to grapple with, well, what did all those signs mean? And it didn't mean this is going to happen and you're going to have a healthy baby and they're going to live to be 100 years old. It meant this is what's meant for you on your journey. This is the right embryo because this is the embryo that you're meant to have right now. And this is the baby that you're meant to have. And this point in your journey is where you're supposed to be. And, I know it's difficult to hear things like, everything happens for a reason. So I don't want to frame it that way because I know that can be triggering. But I do feel like for me, like that was the embryo that I needed to transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it didn't go the way that I would have liked it to, doesn't mean it shouldn't have happened. I am grateful that it happened. I wouldn't give up anything in the world to not, for
Mm-hmm.
that experience. I am so grateful that I got to have the experience that I did. And while I wish it ended differently, I see what I learned from it, and I'm grateful for what I had. I'm grateful that I did at least have 1 year with her.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm also not a big fan of saying things happen for a reason, silver
Yeah.
linings.
Yeah.
I think we just, it's not like we're in control. You
Right.
just have to, I don't want to say roll with the punches either. You just have to deal with what's the
Yep.
hand that you're dealt
Yeah.
and then find the meaning in that, I think.
Well, yeah.
Not see it as punishment, not see it
Right.
as,
Right.
um,
Right. Right. I agree.
you cannot control it, you cannot change it. The only thing you
Exactly.
can do
Yeah.
is be very mindful or very, very present in what's happening.
Yep.
I love like some of the things you were telling us about Quinn and your connection and how that taught you that you are a mother and
Mhm.
how it taught you to trust your intuition.
Yeah.
And it was there even when you found out you were having twins, right? Because I remember reading on your Instagram that you already felt like this may be bad news in a way.
Yeah, like I said, we tried to avoid having twins on our whole journey. We did
Mm,
everything that we could to avoid it because I just had a feeling my body wasn't cut out for it and that it wouldn't be good. So when we found out that the embryo had split, there was a lot of like laugh crying,
mhm,
like kind of like, oh, what's gonna happen? Like this doesn't feel good, but then also kind of like delirious, like how'd this happen? And I did have it like just a pit in my stomach. And even though every appointment was telling me things were great until they weren't, I still was just like, I'm not gonna believe it until they're here safely. Like I just didn't feel when we announced our pregnancy, I was so nervous. I just felt like I shouldn't be announcing. I shouldn't be telling people because I don't think this is going to happen. I don't think I'm going to have twins. And I just knew it wasn't going to be the situation that we would have hoped for. I didn't think it would look the way that it did.
mm,
I just didn't think we were going to have twins. I just saw it going very differently. I did not see having two healthy babies. I did think that I would have one healthy baby, but I could see that possibility, but I couldn't see having two
mm,
at any point. It just was very hard to envision.
mm.
Yeah.
And did you find a support community? You mentioned there was the other mom that became your close friend.
Yeah, so I did meet a couple of other moms on the unit, two specifically that we really got really close with, but one whose baby unfortunately also passed away. And it was just really such a gift to have these moms to be able to talk with and be able to connect with and go through that experience with because it is so isolating. Nobody real in my life could have related to that. These moms could because they were living it with me. They were living it, day to day, the same experience. Obviously with some differences, but generally this, very similar experiences.
Mm,
And that bond that we were able to create and those moments where, if I was down, she'd lift me up. When she was down, I'd lift her up. We just really survived together by having that connection to help us get through it. That was a beautiful gift.
mm. And I feel that you also created this whole fertility community for yourself on Instagram, right?
Yeah, I did.
How's that? Do you feel the support from that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't create this Instagram account with the intention of ever sharing fertility things. It
Mm,
was more so, it was for my Etsy shop. That's where I was planning to share my things that I was creating. And then as time went on, I started to share some personal details about our life, and people were responding really positively. And then I started to share more and more. And the more that I shared, the more people would message me and say that they've been through something similar. And it was so nice to have somebody to talk to because not everybody feels comfortable sharing openly. There is still a stigma out there where people feel the need to keep their fertility challenges private.
mm,
So there were people out there who they were like, nobody except you knows that I'm going through this. And I
mm,
take such honor in being that person to connect with somebody and to provide them support. And in the same sense, it would also provide me support, because then I was having all these people who were giving me support back and who were giving me love. And, then I started sharing about my pregnancy, and then I would share about Quinn and Amelia, and then I would share about Quinn. And everybody rallied around her. The amount of support that I got was unbelievable. And the amount of people who loved her from afar, who never met her, who were in other countries and would check in on her and
Mm.
ask about her and say, "Where's our Quinn picture today?" They would love to hear about her. And
Yeah.
that was just so meaningful. And, it was hard when she passed, because so many people were so sad. And I felt, responsible for that to some degree. But it was also so beautiful, because so many people were sad because they loved her and because they experienced her. And I was told by so many people that their lives would have been changed because of Quinn. And
Mm.
that's amazing. Like, that's amazing to me. So I have created, like, not purposely, but a community of followers who support me, and I hope to support them too,
Yeah.
whether it be through fertility or NICU or anything else. It's this is my tribe, and it's the best club, or what is it? The worst club with the best
As
members.
members. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be in this club, but if you are, you're going to make some great friends along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also really recognize what you're saying, that so you create that space for others, or you see that others, can really benefit from having
Mhm.
that community, having a place where, or like you said, some people never even told anyone else what they were going through.
Yeah.
But then that also ends up healing yourself. I mean, that's really been my own journey as well. Where
Yeah.
I started organizing these circles for women
Mhm.
um who are facing unwanted childlessness.
Yeah.
And I had already given up, like on I thought I wasn't going to go into treatment ever again. I was
Mhm.
so done. And then throughout,
Yeah.
those circles and meeting with women, creating space for them to process, their their stuff,
Yeah.
I suddenly realized that I was ready for fertility treatment. It gave me a completely new perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
I totally
yeah.
understand that. Yeah, I felt the same, because there were points in my journey where I was like, I'm going to give up. I'm not going to keep doing it. But I would see people who'd been through, at those times, more severe losses than I'd been through. And I would remind myself, if they can do it, I can do it too. If they're still pushing and they're still trying, I
Mm,
should keep going too. And it would give me strength as well to see, to kind of have these fertility role models to look up to. And now to myself be, hopefully being a fertility role model to other people.
mm,
Um, it's such an interesting shift, and I definitely take honor in having that
mm,
trust that people have in me.
mm. This, though, some of the stories you hear, I
Mhm.
mean, it's a lot that women, get.
So many.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so
And
many.
like, for some women, I don't even know how they can keep going.
Mhm. I know. I know. Things you'd never expect. Seems so cruel
Yeah.
for what people go through.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, if you have like one general message for anyone who's dealing with fertility issues and or pregnancy loss, what would that be?
That you're not alone. It might feel like you are, but there
Mm,
are so many people out there who are in similar boats. No two experiences are the same, of course, but we're all in these boats together, and don't feel like you need to struggle alone. Find somebody who's open about their story or open about their journey
mm,
and connect, or find a support group, or find, somebody through your doctor. There's people out there. It might not always feel easy to talk to your friends about it who haven't gone through this, but there are people out there who have gone through it and who do want to talk and who do want to connect. So find your tribe, find your people who are going to be your supporters through this, because we're out there and
mm.
we're happy to help.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
such good advice.
Yeah.
And if people want to work with you, where can they find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, so on Instagram, my main account where I share like a lot more fertility things and, just personal life things is Fiercely Kind. And my coaching is Kind Minds Coaching. And
And you have a
I,
website that's
yeah,
Kind
my
Minds Coaching.
website is kindmindscoach.com.
Okay, perfect. I'll put
Yeah.
all of
And
that
then
in the
I
show
have a
notes.
separate one for kids too. It's Kind Minds Kids, but you can, they're kind of all linked to each other. So if you go to
Mm,
Fiercely Kind, you'll find Kind Minds Coaching. If you go there, you'll find Kind Minds Kids. You can kind of just follow the breadcrumbs,
mm, yeah,
find all my different accounts.
And I'll put it all in the show notes as well so people can
Sure.
find you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show
Thank
this
you.
week,
Of
for
course.
sharing
Thank
your
you for having.
story.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I just mentioned this to you already because it's Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. I'm organizing a ceremony on Friday, November 1st.
Mhm.
So it will be a ceremony where anyone who wants to commemorate the baby that they lost,
Mhm.
um, I'll create a nice sort of online ritual where we have a little bit of space to share. I think it's always really healing, like, you know, what you did so beautifully as well, when you can share about the baby that was
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Um, Even if you never got to meet them, right? You walked together or they journeyed with you for a while and they left an impression. So it's so healing to be able to share that. And
Absolutely.
then I'll guide us probably through a guided visualization. Not going to give it all away, but
Yeah.
if you want to sign up, you can go to thatfertilefeeling.com/ceremony. Um, Thank you again so much. Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in this week. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram at thatfertilefeeling or email me at francoise@thatfertilefeeling.com. I always love to hear from you and I always get back to you and hope to see you back in 2 weeks' time. Bye bye.